the theme for tonight is how we can find greater freedom within ourselves through compassion, particularly through compassion for ourselves. So the opposite of compassion would be judgment, right? It's where we're angry with ourselves, we judge ourselves, it's not okay. And whenever we do that, which is a natural thing for us to do, it actually stunts us. It keeps us stuck. It keeps us stuck in a place of conflict. It keeps us stuck in a place of where we were, however old we were when we made that ever mistake that we're unhappy with. So if I'm upset with something I did when I was 12, and I'm angry at the part of me who was 12 and did that, then I'm staying in conflict with myself. And that 12-year-old is staying 12 years old. No chance of growing up, no chance of creating greater warmth or wisdom or compassion or healing. It just stays there. So it might feel good to do that and say like, well, I don't want to condone my behavior from the past. I can't say that's okay. So if I'm critical of myself, it sort of protects me from ever doing that again. But in the meantime, when we're doing that, we're actually keeping ourselves stuck. And we're actually not doing anything that is actually helping us grow or heal or move on. So this place of judgment is very natural. And I certainly have my own healthy share of self-judgment and self-aversion for things that I've done in my past. And there's ways that we can step through that, because ultimately, when I do that, that keeps me stuck. That keeps me fighting myself. It keeps me in a place of inner conflict, which is not free. I'm using my energy to fight myself. There's no unity. There's no space of moving forward in the world where I'm doing that. So one way to start with this is to gently acknowledge the raw data of this is what happened. This is the facts. This cannot change. This is what happened. We can only offer compassion and forgiveness up to the point that we have actually acknowledged what's there. If we're not even acknowledging it, we can't even acknowledge this is what happened. There's no chance for us to offer any sort of compassion, any sort of movement or growth or healing from those situations. So just simply saying, this is what happened. It's not really about intention. It's not about blame. It's like, this is the raw data. This is what happened. Like, I was not intending to be mean to my wife when we were dating, but I was. I had this idea of like, I was a nice guy, and I really built myself up to that. And so through our own process, recognizing that, you know what, I was actually not nice to you in all these different instances was really hard for me to swallow. Still sometimes it's hard for me to swallow. And I would judge myself for it. But what that does is that does not promote any sort of healing for myself. It actually keeps me stuck at age 29 or 28 or however old I was at the time, or 30 and 31 and 32. But in this process, if I can just acknowledge this is what happened, that's a step for me to move forward. When I was in college, Jerry Springer came to talk, and our school often had these talks of different people, athletes or comedians or different famous people, I guess, to come in. And so I went to this talk, and not because I was a particular fan of his show, but because I was more curious than anything. And who he presented himself to be was very different from him on the show. And it was very thoughtful. He was very magnanimous. He was very compassionate and understanding. And at one point, someone in the audience like shouted something out to embarrass him, shouted out the name of the woman that he was caught cheating with or something. And he just stood there, he took it, and he said, so what was your goal with that? You wanted to embarrass me? You've embarrassed me. Okay, great. Now can we move on? And I thought it was really amazing that he did that. Like, that was, for me, that was like, I'm acknowledging this. I'm not fighting it. I'm not really yelling at you. I'm not judging myself from it. I'm not letting that come up. I'm just like, this is the raw data. This is what happened. This is what I'm feeling. Okay, great. Now can we move forward? He didn't seem to hold a grudge towards the woman. He just continued on as if that hadn't happened. So when we offer ourselves that's the raw data, this is what actually happened, then we're able to move through. We're able to move to the next place. That's that first space that we practice in meditation, is mindfulness. We're aware. This is the data. This is what's here. Cool. And now what do I want to do with that? So part of this idea of self-compassion is for us to recognize that at all times we are doing the very best we can. And often, it's that hindsight is 2020. When we're judging ourselves from things we've done in our past, we're judging it from where we are now. So if I'm judged myself for when I was 29 or 30 and 31 for the missteps I took then, regardless of my intention, I'm judging it from the awareness that I've gained in all these years since then. And through the work that I've done, that I've freed myself from some of those issues and can see a bigger perspective. So I can say, like, I didn't have this perspective when I was 29 that I hold now. So this is what happened, and I can understand that even regardless of what had happened, I did the best that I could. It doesn't mean that I'm infallible, of course not. But it's through our mistakes that we learn. It's through our missteps. It's through this feedback that we get, like, that's not cool, even if our intention is right. And ultimately, our deepest intention is to love. Some of you may have heard this story before, that when my mom was 17 or 18, she had a school dance, and she had lost some weight for the dance. She fit in her dress real perfectly. She got her hair just right. She was super excited about this. She felt like $1 million coming out of her dresser. She came outside, and my grandmother, her mother, turned to her, and the first thing she said to her was, "Well, it's a good thing you're not an ounce heavier, otherwise you wouldn't fit in that dress." That's like crushing, right? But ultimately, understanding some of the history, it makes sense why my grandmother said that. At that point, my grandmother had been widowed. And for her, she did not want my mom to experience that same sort of loneliness and pain that she was feeling. So in order to not feel that, you need to be with a man. You need to have a partner. So in order to do that, you have to look a certain way. So that it came out as criticism. It came out as something mean, but the ultimate initial goal, initial intention was one of compassion, was one of love. Now, I don't know if my mom understands that or understood that at the time or even understands that now, but truly that was the intention was one of love. So even the things that we do that we don't like currently, or things that we've done in our past that we didn't like, at its core we're doing something out of a sense of love, out of a sense of self-protection, out of a sense of self-love, out of a sense of, I want the best here. It may come out totally wrong. It may come out completely mean. It may end up being hurtful. Even that's not our intention. But when we can connect with that deeper sense of, like, this is really what I was hoping for. This was my sense of hope and love and intention, whether it's love for self or love for other, that allows us to spark some compassion. It gives us the space to let down some of those places of self-judgment, of self-anger, of self-resentment. And we open the space up for some understanding for ourselves. It doesn't mean that we just say, like, okay, well, whatever I meant how to do it, you can just write off anything. We need to connect with what actually happened, connect with the pain. But then when we do that, we're able to let it go. We're able to offer some compassion, some understanding, and then move to a new space. And we allow that self, for me when I was 27, to grow up, to meet me where I am at now, and I'm not keeping him in jail. The question is, how long do you want to keep yourself in jail for? I'll close with this story that two monks are walking down the road, and they come across a woman, and they see a little path of mud. And so one monk picks her up and carries her across the mud and pushes her down the other side, and they both continue on their way. Hours later, the other monk turns to him and says, he's just irate. He's like, I can't believe you did that. We're not supposed to touch women. Like, that's totally against our rules, and like that's totally against, like, our code of conduct. And the first monk said, I put her down back at the mud pile. Why are you still carrying her? So I'll invite you to consider the things that you are still carrying from your past, that you're holding yourself against, and see where you can find that space of compassion for yourself for these things. Because in that, you work together with yourself. You're not working against yourself. There is great freedom in that for you to explore and to empower you to move forward. So I thank you so much for your presence tonight. I thank you so much for your attention, and I wish yourselves a pleasant evening.